Hello, namaste, and welcome to this very special episode of the Enter Trainer Show. It's going to be a little bit of a departure from my previous episodes of the Enter Trainer Show, where it was more about films, music, stories, and all that. Today, but the whole idea is that the episodes should have entertaining content. And I have got hold of a great friend of mine, Mr. Sanjeev Verma, to have a chat with us today. And we are calling this episode as the English professor. As you can see, he's smiling as I call him a professor of English. That he is, because he's a broadcaster, he is a communicator, is brilliant in the way he speaks. So if you have not been to London and you have not heard British English live in London, you can hear it right now along with us. And he's a communications expert. He teaches people how to write, and he's been a broadcaster, a journalist. Absolutely brilliant. Sanjeev, such a pleasure to have you with us on the Entertainer Show. And you know that I'm a bit of a narcissist. I don't invite a lot of people on my programs. I like to do all the talking myself. But you have inspired me to do this little chat show with you on the English language. I mean, we are all connoisseurs of the English language, and I am an author myself. I've written a few books, but I'm always so fascinated whenever I hear you speak, and also our colleagues who hear you speak. So welcome to the Entertainer Show. It's a very special episode called The English Professor. How does it feel to be called as an English professor?
Thank you, Hari, for that very flattering introduction. It feels a little strange because I never thought that I could teach anybody anything.
Okay.
It's accidentally that I discovered that I could perhaps do communication skills programs and so on. It happened purely by accident. Early on in life, my greatest fear was the fear of public speaking.
Okay.
I would, go up as a child. I remember I'd go up on platforms and I'd completely freeze. I lost my voice and I'd be completely tongue-tied. But over a period of time, I discovered that the only way to get rid of these fears is throw yourself at the deep end and then see if you sink or swim. So luckily I didn't sink, and here I am today. I love the English language, but I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go along.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of a little episode I read about Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was one of India's greatest speakers ever, one of the world's greatest speakers, actually. I think he had a fear of public speaking too when he was studying at the Oxford. And I think I read somewhere in Panditji's own words, I think, that he used to avoid participating in the debating societies. However, he went on to become one of the world's greatest speakers. His diction, his language, and the way he presented are absolutely awesome. I think it's wonderful to see your transformation. Also, I myself was a very shy kid, and they had to give me money to speak. I think now they do the reverse. They give me money so that maybe I can keep quiet for a while. So, Sanjeev, this is quite intriguing to understand. Where did this love for the English language develop? I'm sure many of us are English school educated. So we have grown up in big cities and we have gone to English medium schools. So obviously there is a natural propensity towards the language, but still I find very few people have the kind of command over the language that you have. So where did this come from?
Okay, so I'm before I answer that question, let me talk about Nehru a little bit, because Jawaharlal Nehru, of course, is one of my great heroes. It's very sad, the kind of mud that is being flung at him in the current environment, but he's absolutely one of the finest leaders and one of the finest speakers of the English language that I've I've ever had the
Absolutely.
pleasure to hear. The speech that he made on the 15th of August, 1947, the Tryst with Destiny speech, it's one of the most stirring things that I've ever heard. And he wrote it himself. He
Right.
wrote it himself and he delivered it himself in impeccable style, superbly done. And I've heard that speech, I don't know, maybe 100 times, maybe more. And every time I hear it, I get goosebumps. So that's a little bit about Nehru.
No, I think if I were to add on to that, I think even the speech where he spoke after which he gave after Gandhiji's passing away, the
Sure.
light has gone out of our lives. I think the story goes, not sure, but this is what I heard, that he was asked to address the nation and he was in a complete state of shock and he didn't know what to say. But I think when he came to the studio, the first words that came out were the light has gone out of our lives. Which is also a classic, you know, you may call it in public speaking or in that context to come up with such richness of words when somebody is under so much grief is quite amazing.
Some people just have the gift, Hari. Now, so to talk about my love for the English language, I think to begin with, I'd say that it came from my father. My father's a purist. He spoke and wrote Hindi, Urdu, and English with equalies. And if I see Hindu and Urdu as sister languages, which I do, one cannot exist without the other.
Right.
I found him truly bilingual, and I admire people who are truly bilingual. So you are equally proficient in Hindi as well as English, or it could be Tamil and English, or
Yeah, it's
whatever,
for me,
Bengali
it's
and
more of
English.
Hindi and English. Yeah.
So as I was growing up, I heard him talk, and I wanted to speak like him. That was a big driver. He passed away when I was very young. I was only 15 years old when he died. But he left behind as my inheritance some of the most beautiful books that I've ever seen or I've ever owned. This was a priceless collection of literature. So there were especially books on poetry. He loved English romantic poetry.
Okay.
So William Wordsworth and John Keats and Shelley and Samuel Taylor Coleridge and Byron and so on. So I grew up, listening to, or rather reading this poetry, and I was deeply moved by it. But eventually, what made me truly fall in love with the English language was when I started reading these great Victorian romantic novels. I'm talking about a novel like, for instance, Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I absolutely love that novel. I've read it countless times. I think I know the story backward. I love the story of Bathsheba Everdeen and her many suitors. After Far from the Madding Crowd, I discovered many other novelists, people like Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, Emily and Charlotte. Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, for me, is the greatest novel that I've ever had the pleasure to read. Along with these people, there were other great Victorian storytellers, Charles Dickens, George Eliot, Henry James, Oscar Wilde, Thackeray, W.M. Thackeray, W. Somerset Maugham. Somerset Maugham for me is one of my favorite ever writers. I love everything that he ever wrote. And then there was this novel, A Passage to India, by E.M. Foster. I've read that novel over and over again. It's made a great impression on me. It's a story about India in the days of British rule, the Raj. So this was my initial love for the language, but while this was happening side by side, I was discovering the pleasure of listening to the radio. And when I say the radio, I specifically mean BBC.
BBC, yeah, absolutely.
In those days, in the late 1970s and early 80s, BBC radio was available on shortwave.
Right.
Today, of course, we have FM, but this is the days, this is the analog sort of days and days of the short wave and medium wave and so on. And shortwave reception was very poor. But I would listen to the BBC insistently. I love the way those broadcasters spoke. There was a gentleman whose programs I never missed. His name is Richard Baker, Sir Richard Baker. He did a program called Baker's Half Dozen. And I used to listen to this program every week. I think it was Friday that he used to present it, half an hour program. And I absolutely adored just his, his style, his wit, his gracefulness, and so on. And then I'm a great cricket lover. In those days, cricket buff, if you were, it meant listening to the radio.
Right.
There was television, which came later, after in the mid 80s and so on. There's a presenter called Christopher Martin Jenkins, who's a former a British player, English player. He used to do a program called the Test Match Special on BBC Radio. I heard CMJ, Christopher Martin Jenkins is known as CMJ. I heard all his dispatches. He would speak for about 15-20 minutes. He would encapsulate what had happened on the field of play that particular day, test match between England and India, or England and Australia, and so on. And I loved the way he spoke. And these were the sort of major influences that drove me in the direction of English language. And then one more program that I'd like to mention. This is a program called Desert Island Discs. In this program, BBC would invite a celebrity, usually a writer or a filmmaker, actor, even a politician. They would invite these celebrities to select 8 pieces of music which they would like to take with them to an island where they were to be marooned with no rescue inside. So you could be there for the rest of your life. Which 8 pieces of music would you choose to take with you in such a hypothetical scenario? The presenter of this program is a gentleman called Roy Plumley. Later, it was Sue Lawley and then Kirsty Young. I loved all of them, and this program was wonderful. So you heard great actors and great writers. People like Somerset Maugham were interviewed, Alec Guinness, and and it was such a pleasure to listening to it. So radio has always been my first love, and as I grew up and got into my teens, I think I did my first radio program when I was 16 years old. I found in the silence and the lonesomeness of a soundproof studio, I discovered myself, because I found that I loved talking. I wasn't otherwise expressive at all. I was a bit of an introvert. But in the studios of All India Radio, I found myself transformed. So radio is where I would say I found my groove. And when I say I found my groove, I laugh a little bit, because In the Groove was the name of the first radio program that I did, that most broadcasters did. It was called In the Groove on Yuvani. And then I went on to present other Yuvani programs. They were called Play It Cool, Sunday Requests, A Date With You, and Lunch Hour Broadcasts, and so on. These were popular music programs, but eventually I found my groove with Western classical music.
Okay.
Today, that's an inseparable part of my life. I listen to Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert all the time. It's my long and abiding love.
Wow. I mean, I'm so fascinated listening to your journey in terms of, there seems to be a very romantic relationship with the language. It's not, so one is to be good at the language. Another is to be really, really good at the language. But I think there is it just seems to run in your veins, and you seem to have such a romance with the language. My father himself, he was a great inspiration for us also, because he studied in the Tamil medium in school, but very few people, I think, in our family spoke the kind of English that he used to speak. And my elder brother and me used to always look up to him. We used to go to him with words and ask for the meaning. And I remember as a kid, we used to watch the Yes Minister series on Doordarshan. I pretended I understood a lot. I didn't understand much. But my brother and father, they really, and my mother also, they 3 of us, they really enjoyed. And that was some kind of an education in the English language, when we were watching that series. When you hear people talk English around you professionally, or even in normal conversations that people have, what appalls you the most? What do you find really appalling?
I don't know if one can talk about that in those terms, that I find myself appalled, because I don't really think it's so much about making mistakes. You do something, you will make mistakes.
Yeah.
But I believe, and even if I'm speaking in a bit of a cliche, I believe that the thing to learn from the thing is to learn from your mistakes and not to repeat them. And I believe the key lies in your ability to keep it simple.
Yeah.
So if you are going about parading your knowledge, you want to say something profound, or you think profundity comes from being complex, that's an approach which I think is deeply flawed. Profundity comes from simplicity. So just keep it simple. Uh, uh, I I have done research on some of these things, and I know that English language has something like 125,000 words. The Oxford English Dictionary, the unabridged Oxford English Dictionary, which is the greatest repository of English language, it has something like 90,000 words, and about 45,000 words which have fallen into disuse. So they've become archaic words, but they're still used. So in all, it amounts to about 125,000 words. Now, nobody who's ever lived would have ever known all these 125,000 words. It's not possible. So if the thumb rule is that if you know about 30,000 or maybe 40,000 words, you're fine. You can read a standard English newspaper if you know about 20,000 words.
20,000 words.
Yeah. But if you know 60, maybe 70,000 words, you have a good vocabulary and it will serve you well. So you can read novels by Salman Rushdie or Vikram Seth or any of the great novels and novelists. But in our context, if we're talking more in the context of business writing, I always say that, always write simply, always use the simpler word, and never show off.
Absolutely.
The key to communication is not showing off. Don't go saying tour de force and pièce de résistance and French. These are lovely French phrases, but unless you're sure your audience will understand these phrases, there's no point using them, because then you are showing off. So don't say a raison d'être. Raison d'être means purpose of existence. But if you say raison d'être and your audience thinks that you're showing off, you failed as a communicator. So this is something that I've very strongly believed, and I follow it to a T. So not so much mistakes, like I said, but I can offer some tips if you like. And these are what I think are common everyday mistakes. So people say, for instance, I'll give you just 2 or 3 examples, and then we'll move on. People say, "I'll revert back to you." Now, that is a deeply flawed sentence, because you only need to say revert, because the idea of reverting back, the word back is included in the word revert. You can't revert forward, so you can only revert back. So you can't reply back. You can only reply. So that's back is unnecessary. You can drop it. People say, "I will add on to that," which is again not correct. To something someone is saying, don't say add on, say add to.
Add to. Okay.
Add on is an extra charge. Add on bank charge levied by your bank, or something which you adding on top of your pizza, an additional pizza topping. That's an add on. If you merely want to add something to what I'm already saying, the expression is add to, not
add on. And it's a very common mistake we all make. when we use this.
And let me just talk about two words and this is something I'm very fond of saying. So I'm going to use this platform to talk about these two words, which I think are the most abused words in English language. The first is literally. Now, literally, this word is an adverb. It means in the exact or actual sense. That's literally. The opposite of literally is metaphorically or figuratively. So when you say, and this is something which commonly people say, I saw this thriller film the other day, and I was literally glued to my seat. Now, that is incorrect. What you mean is exactly the opposite. What you mean is you were metaphorically glued to your seat. Because if you literally glued to your seat, it would mean that after the film, you weren't able to get up because someone had poured glue on your seat and you were stuck. So the thing is to say metaphorically or figuratively. So literally is used in the sense that I just described, or you say that the story was so scary that I literally died. Now, if you literally died, you've died. There's no more of you. There's nothing to talk about. So what you mean is in a figurative sense, I died. So literally is a very abused word. The other word that I like talking about is unique.
Unique, okay.
Unique. It's an absolute adjective. It means one, of which there is only one. So just one. Taj Mahal, for instance, is unique. Why it's unique is because nothing like Taj exists anywhere in the world. Donald Bradman is unique.
Unique.
The greatest batsman ever. You can't say you can't qualify the word unique. Some people say it is somewhat unique or it is rather unique, which is terrible. Unique is an absolute. And it's an absolute like pregnancy is. A woman is either pregnant or she's not pregnant. She can't be somewhat pregnant.
Yeah.
So these are words that I think.
So is it okay to say I am pregnant with ideas? It's another highly used sentence.
Yes, that's you're using it in a figurative sense, which is all right. Although it's not the best expression that I would advise, but it's not incorrect.
And can somebody say that I am unique?
If you think, I mean, all of us are unique. Each one of us, because to find a spitting, image of yourself among the 7-8 billion people in the world, I think is a futile exercise. It's not going to happen. But so that you can safely claim. Yes.
Please continue.
No, I was just going to add cliches to this list of things that people should, I think, stay clear of. There are these cliched phrases that are often used. So, people will say crying over spilt milk, or putting the cart before the horse, pot calling the kettle black, or missing the woods for the trees, and so on. These have become insufferable cliches over hundreds of years. William Shakespeare, the greatest writer of the English language, he once wrote in his play, The Merchant of Venice, he said, "All that glitters is not gold." It was a lovely line, which meant that everything that is shiny on the surface is not gold. So don't be deceived. But we have, since he wrote it in the 16th or the 17th century, after he's written it, the succeeding 3 or 4 centuries, we've overused and abused the phrase so much that it's become insufferable. Now, if somebody says all that glitters is not gold, you want to throttle that person. So I think.
So did he mean it in the sense of gold, or did it have a metaphorical connotation to it? What was his?
It was a metaphor. What it was used in The Merchant of Venice, the play, the first time, and what he meant was, don't let people deceive you. All that glitters is not gold.
Not gold.
So it might shine and it might look like it might be gold, but actually, if you look closely, it isn't. That's what he meant, and that's the sense in which the phrase is used, but it's grossly overused.
Right. And what about if you want to succeed in life, you have to burn the midnight oil?
Again, it's a cliche. Any phrase which which has been used and overused over a period of time, if it enters your language, you sound stilted and you sound very predictable. And it's better to use simple words and uh, rather than say, you need to burn the midnight oil. You can just say, work hard,
Yeah.
keep at it, don't give up, and those sort of easier phrases to understand. Don't bring in midnight oil. This crying over spilt milk. When I was in my corporate career, I remember in a meeting somebody used the phrase, "Let's not cry over spilt milk." And I'm a creature of habit, so it's almost instinctively that I responded to it, and I said, "Where's the milk and who spilt it?" So he was astonished. He said, "No, it's a phrase." So I said, "Yeah, I know it's a phrase, but it's a pathetic phrase. So let's stay clear of it."
The other word I find interesting, also it's happened during our association, is content or
Sure.
content. So where do you use content and where do you use content? Because
Yeah.
again, the
So
corporate
same
circles,
word.
it's a common word.
No, absolutely. It's the same word, spelled exactly the same, content. If you pronounce it content, what you're talking about is the state of contentment or your satisfaction. That is content. If you say content, you're talking about a piece of writing.
Right.
So you've created content. So you can be content with the content that you've created.
Absolutely.
So that's the difference in the word. And if you say content for content or vice versa, it's not right. And it's over a period of time from use that you will begin to appreciate difference in pronunciation. Another word which is kind of similar, not really similar. It's something that I was thinking about just a few days ago. Mischievous. It's a word that we use very often, and because of the way people pronounce it, they say mischievous.
Mischievous, yeah.
Mischievous. If you pronounce it mischievous, you think that it is spelled with an I after V, between P and O. But actually, it's mischievous, not mischievous. So Mischievous. That's the spelling of mischievous. But because you pronounce it mischievous, you tend to add an extra I, which doesn't need to be there. The word has two I's, not three.
So it is actually pronounced, it needs to be pronounced as mischievous or mischievous?
Mischievous.
Okay.
Mischievous.
And what is the pronunciation of pronunciation? Is it pronunciation or is it pronunciation?
Pronunciation.
So, okay.
Pronounce is Pronouncee, but pronunciation is Pronun.
So does a word, does pronunciation as a word exist, or it is just misinterpreted?
It doesn't.
It doesn't exist.
I'll give you another example, Hari. And this is something which I discovered very late in life. For a long time, I used to say irreparable. Irreparable. So something that can be repaired is repair. And so extension of repair is, I thought, repairable. But that word is pronounced reparable. It's irreparable, and that's how it is spelled. So the spelling of irreparable is IRREPARABLE. It's not repair, REPAIR, which is usually the mistake that people make.
So how do you pronounce that? REPAIR, repair.
No, there is no I in if you're saying reparable or irreparable, there is no I in it. It is without the I.
It is without the I. No, I'd say, I mean, REPAIR, repair. Is that repair is the right pronunciation, or is it repair?
Repair, yes.
Repair is the right pronunciation.
REPAIR is repair, for sure. But if you're saying reparable or you're saying irreparable, reparable means something that can be repaired. Irreparable means something which cannot be fixed. Then it's pronounced irreparable and reparable.
And I had this habit of using the word freezed, and one day you corrected me saying that's frozen. So there is no word called freezed, is it?
No, there isn't.
There is no word called freezed. But
No.
Indians are highly inventive. So, but I'm also told that because of our assimilative nature and inventiveness, some of our words have found their way into the Oxford Dictionary.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one example I'll give you straight away. In Indian newspapers growing up, I came to accept that there's a word called preponed. So the program has been preponed.
Preponed.
If something can be postponed, so you think that something can be preponed. It's
Preponed.
been brought forward.
Yeah.
Such a word didn't exist anywhere in the world except in India. The rest of the world said the program has been advanced.
Advanced, yeah.
But if you look up prepone on Oxford English Dictionary, it will say that it's come from India, and
Okay.
the dictionaries come to accept the word, but it's a terrible word to use. You should stay clear of it, because it's just, because postpone is a word, you think prepone is also a word
Right.
you're using.
I also reflect sometimes on my own pronunciation, and these days, just tell me whether this is correct or wrong. Do you say past or do you say past?
Oh, you say past. Past is American.
Okay. Okay.
Americans claim they speak English, but they speak Americana, not so much English.
Okay.
So my affinity, I'm being facetious when I say all this, but my affinity is for British English.
For the British
English. That's how it should be.
So is it classroom or classroom?
Classroom.
Classroom. Okay.
It's like color and favor. I over so many years to see color spelled without the U.
Yeah.
COLOR, COLOR,
yeah.
is how Americans say it. Or honor also, they will
Correct.
say HONOR. I think it's hideous. It's terrible.
So where did this, if you have any idea around it in terms of where did this war of the words and the language start between, say, America and England? So, because even I find it very funny to write color without the U or honor without the U.
Favor.
Favor, yeah. So
absolutely. No, I just think you can put it down perhaps to the propensity that Americans have to contract things, to make them shorter and crisper. So one of my pet peeves is the SMS language, the short messaging service. There were days when every time you sent a message, if it was over 100 characters, you were charged twice. So if you wrote 101 characters instead of 100, you were charged twice for a message. So people, for that reason, started to write just the letter U for YOU. So they started contracting letters so that you kept to the 100-character limit. I think this thing spilled over into normal writing. So even when you're writing emails, where you don't have such a constriction, people would say the letter U for YOU, which I think is a terrible way of writing. It's crept into normal expression, and I think it's wrong.
One of my favorite words in the English language, which also we started with, and I hope I pronounced it correctly, is connoisseur. Is that the way it is pronounced?
It is connoisseur.
I just love that word for some reason. It sounds great, and it just tells you, like you, I'm also a connoisseur of Test cricket. I'm not so fond of the T20 or the one-day format, though they are also very exciting. But I think it doesn't really capture the essence of life like Test cricket does. A very critical question here is, you do conduct a lot of these writing workshops for organizations. And I suppose you also help individuals if they want to, let's say, author a book, or they want to write something, they want to write a blog. You are also into CEO coaching in terms of helping them with their writing abilities. Where do you see the gap in the corporate world in terms of their writing skills and their competencies, to write a very meaningful, effective email, for example? Because I think in the corporate world, it's more a business communication, of which email is a part. It's not the only thing.
No, absolutely. I think the problem really is that you know you tend to use jargon a lot in the business world. You think that let's say, both you and I, we've worked in the financial services space, life insurance, and you tend to use jargon that is used in the financial world. Now, you could have reasonably intelligent people, let's say a intelligent 30-year-old man or woman, who, if he or she does not understand that jargon, will not know what you're saying. So I think you need to de-jargonize writing
Right.
and write or speak in a manner that reasonably intelligent 13, 14-year-old person. My benchmark is a 13-year-old boy or a girl should be able to understand what you're saying, as long as you are speaking in regular English language and the person is conversant with English language. I should be able to understand. And any kind of writing that you do. So I like to say that I'm sector agnostic as a writer. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm writing on a financial services company or an IT company or a power company, and I've worked for all these companies. It doesn't matter to me which sector I'm in, because the essential skill that I think I possess, maybe I'm wrong, but the skill that I possess is the ability to communicate an idea simply and effectively. And that can be done across sectors. So I'm sector agnostic, and I will research and I will write in a manner that a reasonably intelligent 14-year-old or 13-year-old can understand what it is that I'm trying to say. That's my approach to business writing. That is the one message that I try and communicate to people who I do these business writing workshops for, or speaking communication workshops for. And I think that's the most important message. I've had occasions where people have asked me, but when I was growing up, my teacher told me that you must use complex words and big words and so on. And I think that's just such a terrible thing to do, because you're always talking down to your audience. If you're using big words, there's no need to say, let's say, use a word like perspicacious. Perspicacious, if I don't know the meaning of, and you are calling me perspicacious, I think you are sort of abusing me. You're saying something terrible about me.
Yeah.
But you're actually not, because perspicacious means wise. So you're calling me wise, but because you're saying perspicacious and I'm unaware of the meaning of the word, I might think you getting into a fight with me.
I may be reading too much into that word because I don't know the meaning.
Exactly. So if you're talking down to an audience, you are a terrible communicator. If, on the other hand, you gauge the level of the people that you're talking to, and then you talk to them, that's the best communication. There's a German word that I'm very fond of using. It's called Schadenfreude. It's been adopted in English language. English has taken these phrases from French, from German, from Italian and Latin, and so on. Schadenfreude means feeling happy at the discomfort of someone else.
Okay.
It's a beautiful word. We all feel that somebody is going through a tough time and you're very happy because you don't like the person. That word is Schadenfreude, and a lot of English language newspapers use the word, but I don't agree with its usage in a popular medium like mainstream media, because people may not understand what the word is.
Exactly.
So why are you using it? So that's my philosophy.
So, what is the solution for uh, consistently writing grammatically incorrect sentences? I find this so common amongst a lot of people who are either writing books or writing emails. Something as simple as an email, uh, you can easily spot many grammatically incorrect sentences. What's the solution for that? And where does it stem from?
I think the only solution is keep at it, keep practicing, and the more you write, the better you will get. So and I'm sure we're approaching the end of this conversation, and the one thing that I did want to say is that there are two things that you need to be able to read and speak well. You need to read a lot, and you need to write a lot.
Yes, I was coming to the reading part. How important is that in terms of improving your language?
Oh, critical, absolutely critical. You need to read fine writers. You need to see what reading, great literature or a great piece of writing, an article, long form article or whatever. What it will give you is you'll be able to see how people use words and sentences to paint pictures. So you read George Orwell. George Orwell's written a novel called 1984. It's an outstanding work of fiction. It is a fictional world, but he's tried to draw a dystopian world in the future. He wrote it in the 1950s, and he's talking about the year 1984. It's brilliant. So you read George Orwell, you read Salman Rushdie, you read Vikram Seth, you read Arundhati Roy, who's very close to my favorite writer in the world in English language. She's written her second novel. She wrote her first novel is called God of Small Things. Her second novel is called The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. And the prologue to that novel is about vultures dropping dead in Delhi. It's just about 250 words, and she's talking about how we used to see these vultures lining up on the wires along Yamuna River. And today they are all gone. Where have they gone? Why have they gone? She's described that in the prologue to this book in 250 words. And it's one of the most evocative, exquisite pieces of writing that you will ever read. It's descriptive, it's moving, and it's very relatable. So read these great writers. In fact, what I suggest to people is make this a tactile experience. I mean, when I say tactile means touch and feel. So write a passage from Ministry of Utmost Happiness or Midnight's Children or any favorite book that you have. Write it in your own hand. Use pen and paper, and you write it 3 or 4 times. Use let's say a 500-word passage, and write the same passage about 3 or 4 times. Over a period of time, you will be able to see why certain words have been used, the turns of phrase, and it will almost give you the feeling that you have written those 500 words. These are written by, Somerset Maugham or Jane Austen, but because you are writing in your own hand, you'll get this feeling that you have written it, and it's an absolutely indescribable feeling. I just strongly recommend that people learn writing by going through that process. And apart from reading great books, read newspapers, read the great newspapers of the world. Financial Times, which is published from London, is for me the greatest newspaper in the world. Read The Guardian, which also is published in London. New York Times, outstanding publication. Read magazines like The Economist, The New Yorker, and read style guides. Every newspaper in the world has a style guide. And I possess, I think, almost all the style guides of the great newspapers in the world. Over a long period of time, I managed to collect them. Some of them, Wall Street Journal, for instance, you can buy their style guide on Amazon, and it's wonderful. They alphabetically list things you should or should not be using, do's and don'ts of writing. And I think it's a great way of teaching yourself how to write.
So one final question. Sure. Such a beautiful conversation that we are having right now, but just to bring it to closure, as a journalist, you have had an opportunity to interact with some celebrities also. You have had an opportunity to interview. And I have always been fascinated by, once you shared that you had an opportunity to meet up with Amitabh Bachchan. How was the experience? Because we know that man's personality, his voice, we have never met him. So we've seen him on screen, on television, on YouTube. But how was it to interact with him face to face? And also, is his language very impressive in the way he communicates and the way he expresses himself?
So that's talking specifically about Amitabh Bachchan. I have to say that he's someone whose bilingualism is truly impressive, because when he speaks in Hindi and Urdu, it's impeccable. He recites his father's poetry, Hariharan Iyer. It's beautiful. In 1982, the Asian Games in Delhi, the opening clip that was used, it was Amitabh Bachchan's voice, his deep baritone voice, which was used, and it's so impactful, so beautiful. When he speaks in English, he is flawless. And I think the key to it is that he speaks in very measured tones. He doesn't try to rush through what it is that he's trying to say. So that's always, made a deep impact on me. Just the manner of his speaking. So you ask him a question, he'll pause. And I think he told me once that he gets that talking style from the man that he admires the most. And the man he admires the most is Dilip Kumar. Dilip Kumar, who I think is the greatest actor that I have ever seen. Definitely in Indian cinema, I don't think there's been a greater actor. And Amitabh says about Dilip Kumar that he's a textbook of film acting. Anything that you ever wanted to learn about the film craft and the craft of acting, you turn to Dilip Kumar. And since I'm talking about Dilip Kumar, I also did a couple of interviews with Dilip Kumar.
Wow.
He was shooting a film for Subhash Ghai called Saudagar. And on the sets of Saudagar, I spent 6 hours interviewing Dilip Kumar. And I was astonished at how much he knew about English theatre. When I say English theatre, I mean British theatre. All the great theatre actors of the British stage, Laurence Olivier and Alec Guinness and John Gielgud and Sir Ralph Richardson, all of them are knighted, so they're all Sir. I'm being disrespectful by not saying Sir Laurence Olivier and so on. But he knew about all of them and he'd seen their work. And I'm talking about this interview would have taken place in the late 1980s. And you can just see that, when your exposure to your craft is global, when it's not restricted to let's say India or a part of Asia, when it's truly global in nature, it affects your art. And that's the greatness of someone like Dilip Kumar, who's then, of course, gone on to influence actors like Amitabh Bachchan, and I'm sure everybody else.
Absolutely. That is, I think in all the fantastic actors in Bollywood, at least, there is always a shade of Dilip Kumar somewhere.
I'll tell you an instance which I used to write for the Sunday Observer newspaper, and I recall this instance in my interview. Sitting on the sets of Saudagar, I asked him a question, and he was deeply hurt, and the word is hurt. So I told him that I'd like you to respond to this criticism that is often aimed at you, where people say that you've perfected the art of emoting, crying on screen. So most of your acting is crying on the screen. So how do you respond to that? And I thought it was a simple question, and he gave me a nice answer. For about 2 minutes, he didn't speak. He just looked at me, then looked away, and then would look back at me. He was nearly in tears. So I said, "Look, I'm very sorry. If you're, upset by the question, let me withdraw the question." He said, no. You are a serious critic of the cinema. You've asked me a question. I will answer it, but just give me some time. I said, please take all the time. And then finally, he said that if this is true about me, I have wasted my entire life, because it's the only thing that I know. I have been able to keep my head above water because I know how to act. And if my acting is limited to crying on the screen, then I wasted my life. And I recall this entire episode in my interview. And I said, it's one time in my life that I've been very upset with myself for asking somebody like that a question. I'm as a journalist, your job is to ask questions, and uncomfortable questions even. But in his case, I was only being provocative in my question. And it led to, he gave me a 10-minute answer, and he sounded deeply hurt. I'm glad that eventually, in hindsight, I'm glad I asked the question, but it was quite a quite an experience.
Yeah, because he also had a chance to clarify in that sense.
Absolutely.
So before I end, is it provocative or provocative?
Provocative.
Provocative. Okay. Okay. Right. So, Sanjeev, it's always an education to talk to you when it comes to the English language. And myself, I'm author of multiple books. Learning never stops. And I don't read my books too much because I'm scared about spotting the mistakes I might have made in the language or in the grammar.
Which is why you need a good editor.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
matter how great a writer you are,
Right.
Salman Rushdie is, for me, the greatest writer of the English language living currently. But Rushdie writes, he also has an editor.
Absolutely.
Who's able to
You
spot,
always need somebody who can check on it, make the corrections.
Okay.
But then not everybody would be as brilliant in editing, I'm sure, as you probably are. So thank you so much for having this absolutely amazing conversation about the English language, the language we all love, we all have grown up with. My mother always tells us brothers that English is your mother tongue, actually, though we are born in a Tamil family, because that's the language we think in. That's the language we are most comfortable talking about, writing, and speaking.
It's interesting you say this, Hari, because I say this to people that when you are alone and you're thinking about your life, the state of your life, or how your day went, which language do you think in?
Yeah.
If you think in English language, then English is actually your first language.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
So Sanjeev, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I would request the audience, whoever has watched this episode, reach out to Sanjeev. I'm putting his email address in the description. So whether as an individual or as an organization, you want to reach out to Sanjeev, learn from him about writing skills, conduct a workshop for yourself or for your organization, feel free to reach out to him. I'm putting my email ID also. You can reach out to me also. And if you feel you want me to connect you to Sanjeev, I'll be very happy to do that. Thank you so much for being a part of this very special episode of the Entertainer Show. And hopefully it was quite entertaining. I find listening to you and talking to you in the English language quite entertaining as well as enriching. So thank you so much, Sanjeev, for being with us. And ladies and gentlemen, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel before you sign off. And please do keep watching my channel. There are a host of videos on various subjects, leadership, management. Many of them are in Hindi also, if you love the Hindi language. And till we meet again, God bless you and do take good care of yourself. And Sanjeev Verma, once again, gratitude to you for being part of the entertainment.
Thanks so much. Many thanks, Hari. Pleasure.